In recent times, it seems that our culture has difficulty appreciating manhood. Oftentimes men are being shamed for being triumphant and victorious. Men are being bashed for rising above the failings of their bodies and emotions, for not exposing pain and for pushing through adversity. Men are being shamed for embodying manly virtues, leading some to feel apologetic about their manliness, and others to stubbornly go to extremes just to maintain these virtues, not showing the wounds they carry, keeping these wounds guarded through denial and isolation, fearing a lack of acceptance from an untrusted environment, and reducing themselves to fragments of a whole that they can't figure out how to put back together. Have you ever asked yourself, friend, how often have you put up a facade of strength and power while secretly fearing failure, grief, surrender, loss, and even death? How many times have you felt ashamed that you cannot triumph over the tough challenges of your life, denying your defeats and the overwhelming sentiment of failure that comes with them? And what happens when you are not allowing yourself to experience the humbling effects of failure and defeat? The short answer would be that you lose your soul and you become a prisoner of the idea of perfection, shaming yourself constantly in your mind for coming up short every time. But the problem of the shame that you might carry is a bit more complex. The distressing absence of pride in pursuing manhood as a whole, instead of focusing only on your ego needs, reflects in you the reality that you have lost or were never introduced to the basic sense of being grounded in your masculine energy, in which failure and defeat are not equivalent to worthlessness. Without such a foundation, you will live according to prescriptions and ideologies and will find no meaning in your life. You will become lonely, your shame will keep you silent and prevent you from connecting with other men, and you will rob yourself of a life of virtue and purpose. To be able to get over the shame that you are feeling, friend, you first need to understand what shame is. Shame is nothing more than a response that you have to experiences that rupture your sense of sufficiency and worthiness. In moments of painful, unavoidable self-consciousness, you will feel yourself inferior in some way. You will want to hide from the exposure to others to avoid being recognized for your inferiority, and you will withdraw in your interior world in search of a flaw. You will experience shame as an expression of your core worth, thinking that you are defective and wrong, powerless to change the condition that leads to your hopelessness. This will transform your internal dialogue into one of self-hatred, carried out to remind yourself of your past, present, and future failures, measuring everything by comparisons in which you come up short, leading you to live in despair. To understand why shame in you as a man can lead to a total collapse of your radiant masculine potential, you first need to recognize the main possible sources of shame that have the potential to divert your life on a course towards nothingness. The first source of shame is the loss of the father. As a young boy, you feel the pull to the father figure, a desire to spend time with him, to interact and to explore the world together. In the absence of such a connection, when these emotional needs are not covered, you end up wounded, ashamed for not being able to create a link with your father, and you will often put the blame for this failure on yourself. Were you ever in a position, friend, in which you lost yourself into fantasies of self-blame, in which you always tried to explain your father's absence as a fault of your own? This type of shame will often be internalized over time, leading you to shape yourself into whatever form you think will be acceptable to your father, to become the perfect son, or to push away and secretly deny your desire for his approval, only to play this desire out with countless other fathers, like street gang leaders or other older men mentors. Another source of shame for you as a man is less obvious, but it involves the erosion that happened over time in our culture in the past years, in the imagination of what the masculine represents. What was once a rich and varied description of what manhood is now reduced to a gross simplification of what it means to be a man. We have moved from an archetypal understanding of manhood, which included images of the sacred king, the fearless warrior, and the passionate lover merged together into one, to stereotyped representations of alpha and beta that only invite to comparisons and shame, instead of connecting and resonating with the souls of men. With such a culture that worships success, wealth, possessions and status over everything else, you are driven to compete for power and position, often forsaking friendships, family and partners, ending up totally alone and unable to make substantial connections with others. Such an approach to life will create a disintegration of the masculine community, which will maintain your isolation created by the chase for success regardless of the price mentality. With such a breakdown of a community of men, you no longer have access to relationships that give you a feeling of belonging, that keep you grounded in reality, and you will be left with your own perceptions of the world, enduring alone, sometimes without knowing the shame of failing in your relationships. Remember, friend, that shame is a sickness of the soul that is maintained through self-neglect, self-hatred and isolation. To restore your masculine vitality, you must make fundamental changes in your relationships with yourself and the world. To be able to initiate the healing process of your piled-up shame, you need to make the following mental shifts. You must move from feeling worthless to seeing yourself as weakened and wounded instead, because you will not attend your pains until you make such a shift. This does not mean that you have to complain and victimize yourself, but rather to acknowledge the problem for what it is. You must move from hating and disrespecting yourself to feeling compassion for your situation. And you must move from concealing your shame to revealing yourself by sharing it with the ones you trust. Until you can do this, friend, an impenetrable wall will shut you out from the living experience of feeling yourself a man among men, and you will severely punish yourself if you do not, at whatever cost to your pride, cease to defend and assert yourself, instead of confessing that you are fallible and human, just like every other man. Dare to establish a relationship with yourself that cares for and honors the wounds that you carry, and allow yourself to move out of shame and into connection with the world. To feel yourself as a man among men requires also a masculine community that can restore the sense of value and wholeness that you seek in your life. Dare to embrace the spirit of manhood and heal your feelings of isolation and shame to give way to the sense of connectedness that you get from being the master of your fate. Drop the cloak of shame that you carry with you and become a man among men. Connect with men of honor, men of good character, and unleash your masculine potential. Will you dare to jump on a journey into manhood, or will you hide in a corner, ashamed of your past, your failures, and your masculine abilities? I dare you to pursue manhood and become another man among men.